afternoon. Thank you for giving up your time. To begin with, we thought it would be helpful to have an overview about Euroclio. And every so often I'm going to look that way, not because I'm ignoring you, but I'm trying to make sure that I go at the right speed for the translators. So I've promised them they can wave at me desperately if I'm going too quickly. Okay, so we have travelled from Europe, from an organisation that you've maybe not heard of yet. We represent lots of different history teacher associations. And we were very happy yesterday to hear there is a history teachers association in Korea. And we think that's a very healthy thing, that professionals should dictate how professionals operate, and they should think about their discipline. And I have homework for you, or classwork for you. And I apologise for that, it makes you feel like your own students perhaps. What we would like you to do during our presentations is to use the post-it notes, the little yellow pieces of paper, to make fish scales. Okay. And what we would like you to do is to think about what you think good history teaching involves. So you make a set of criteria with one item on each post-it note. So you build up the post-it notes, and I will pick one up and show you what I mean. Yeah? Is that reasonably clear? Okay, so that you're thinking about what makes good history teaching. And that might be something to do with knowledge or whatever you think. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes now to talk to the person next to you or behind you about what you think that means. And then we'd like you to add to that as we work through the presentation. So 2 minutes thinking, writing, and then I'll start again. It's okay? Yeah? So what I'm going to do is to talk to you about what we think makes good history teaching. And then you can talk to us later when we have questions at the end. And you might disagree, and that's perfectly okay. There isn't one right answer. There are lots of possibilities. So I'm going to move on a little bit, but please add to it if you think of things. And it's okay to steal ideas from here. So if we have things that you like, you can take them and you can add them to your fish scales. Yeah? Okay. Our organisation was set up nearly 25 years ago because some history teachers were worried about what was done with history in some countries. Okay, so lots of change in Europe and a period of turbulence. And at that time, a group of people were gathered together to think about how is history used for good and how is history sometimes used for less good reasons. And we think history can be a mirror of national pride. It can describe the very best things that we do. So it can talk about scientific achievements, it can talk about national heroes, maybe history covers our victories, our arts and culture, and sometimes things like wealth, power, the growth of a nation or an empire, so positive things. And one of the things which we'll do, if you wish, we can leave the PowerPoint for you so you can take a copy if you want to. And apologies that it's in English and not in Korean. But history can also be very problematic because it can also be a mirror of pain. Occasions where we were defeated or our nation was threatened. Occasions where there is resentment against others, where places were occupied. Sometimes history covers colonialism. The growth of empires means people in charge and also people losing their control. And human rights violations. So history can be both. And history maybe should be balanced. I wonder if that's on your list, to have a balance of things. History is a way of privileging particular information. There isn't enough space in the curriculum, certainly in the countries that we come from the United Kingdom, from the Netherlands, from Russia, from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Curriculum is overcrowded, but I guess that's also true in Korea. Too much to cover in too little time, yes? Okay. So history is always about privileging certain information. And some stories don't get told. And the question sometimes needs to be, who have we left out? Because if we come from majority communities, we don't always know about other people's histories. Or if we come from strong, powerful groups, men, we don't always cover women's history, or minority histories, or regional histories. So there can be problems by accident, and there can be problems deliberately. And this is an example from a Lithuanian textbook, and you don't need to read all the words, but it says, in 1941 the German army entered Lithuania, in the north of Europe. And in 1944, the Red Army, the Soviet army from Russia, entered and occupied on behalf of the USSR. And there's something missing there. It's true, but it's not the whole story. Because it misses the fact that in that period, 200,000 Lithuanians were murdered, and it misses the fact that another 200,000 Polish Lithuanians were deported. So you have truth, but you have a version of the truth. And I wonder if that is on your fish scales, that history is histories, that it is more than one version of the truth, and that good history teaching maybe acknowledges that there is more than one interpretation. Yeah? Concept words like interpretation are very important to us as an organisation. What we try not to do is to just back up nationalistic positioning. Because in 1992, when we were set up, that was one of the things that we felt was uncomfortable. Countries trying to score points off each other. Countries trying to take a position saying, we are better than somebody else. And we think actually cooperation, communication, dialogue, very, very important as an organisation. So we were set up, and sometimes we sound like we are a big, important, impressive organisation. Actually, mostly we're history teachers. Most of our members are teachers in schools across a very, very broad spread of countries. We have a small professional body, our secretariat, but mostly we do what you do. Okay, my colleagues work for NGOs or work for schools. I work as a teacher trainer, and our time with Euroclio is voluntary. And then people like ISIL are part of our excellent support team who help us with projects and also do some of the day-to-day management. So we have a sense of mission, and since the beginning, this is what we would put on our fish scales. To support the development of responsible, so balanced, and innovative history, citizenship and heritage education, because some countries it's called social studies, some countries it's called heritage, some countries humanities, not always called history education. As a way to promote critical thinking, we think it's very important that young people learn to decode sources, to see if they're being manipulated, to think about how stories are told, and to have a really strong ability to think, yeah, there's a particular perspective there. There's a particular bias in that, perhaps, and I want to decide for myself. So democracy, very important to us. Mutual respect, peace and stability. And we think understanding each other helps achieve those things. To listen to other people and to ask them to listen to us. Very, very important. So we don't say there is one history, we say there are lots. We try to challenge myths and stereotypes and explore why they might be partly based on truth, but largely an exaggeration. We try to think about the fact that it's okay to say, I don't agree with you. I have a different way of interpreting that. That we try and do that in a dialogic sense, so it's not about shouting at each other, but it is about talking to each other and being able to cope with something being a different way of approaching the world. And sometimes that means addressing sensitive and controversial issues. And of course many of our members are post-Soviet countries, or post-conflict countries, or countries with very high levels of difficulty in addressing national minority challenges, or all sorts of issues around coping with the complexity of modern nations. And we use a word, I wonder if it's on your fish, multi-perspectivity, the idea of looking at things from lots of different perspectives. It's a very, very important idea in what we're doing. We don't necessarily agree with other positions. Why did Hitler think it was okay to do certain things? You don't have to agree with that, but you should try and understand his motives, because that helps you understand the history. So multi-perspectivity, very big on our fish sales. And we like to think we're a democratic international non-government organisation. We are an association, some people say umbrella, an overarching group covering many small groups. Some of them very small, some of them very large. We have an executive director, we have an elected board. Frank here, who spoke first, is one of our board members, and we have a general assembly, a series of training events, one of which we hold a big meeting. And we try and act as a hub, so we link those associations together. We try and do some outreach. We're delighted to be here as part of that, making links with other communities across and beyond Europe. We do lots of training for history teachers, because sometimes national systems don't necessarily offer that, or we can give an international perspective. We produce educational resources, always written by teachers, not by governments. So written by teachers for teachers. We're interested in good governance, so that organisations we work with need to follow the notion of democratic working. We're interested in research, evidence-based progress. We're interested in lobbying for the history community, because in some places it comes under a lot of pressure. For example, Greece, there's some really heavy dialogues about what goes into the national textbook. And we don't interfere, but we work with local associations. And we also obviously need to pay for our staff, so fundraising, whenever you want to do anything, you have to be able to afford to do it. That's very important for sustainability. So what do? What can we offer you? Well, we're interested in not just European, but world history, regional histories and other histories. We're interested in cultural heritage. Some of our projects have been about key sites, key people, key events, democracy and civil society, inclusion and diversity, a lot of work on minority groups, a lot of work on national groups or groups which cross borders. So for example, the Roma, or many Armenians, Albanians, they're with diasporas, and those peoples can be found in more than one country. Digital learning, we have some really good online resources. I know some of the people we met yesterday have been very good students and had already looked at our website very extensively. That was very impressive. We're interested in peace and reconciliation. We do a lot of work trying to help teachers understand other perspectives and each other, and also remembrance, thinking about key landmarks and chronology. And you can see there, part of the story, mostly an association of European groups, but some across further afield, some I think in North America, Canada, and I think we've got an Australian member, because every so often one of the Australian teacher education professors pops up at conferences, so he's following what we do. And it would be wonderful perhaps to also have Korean membership at some point as an associate member, because we think there's dialogue we can have with you and we can learn from you as well. So what have we done over this time? Well, we've run something like 30 different international events, and we're interested in capacity building. We're not an imperial organisation. We like to try and help develop a local group, so the local group becomes increasingly able to run things with us. So in some of the developing countries after post-Soviet era, capacity building is very important. In some areas where history associations are very new, capacity building is important. We've run something like 200 or almost 200 training events. They can be very large, sometimes 250 teachers from many countries. Sometimes it will be a much smaller event, maybe people from 1 or 2 or 3 countries in a particular location. And that can be all sorts of places, but principally in Europe, but also we've been elsewhere. We present all over the place. I think this is our first visit as a group of trainers here, but some of our secretariat have been in the area before talking to people. And again, you don't need to read the details, but lots of different resources, usually produced in English and local languages. So I think my colleague, Diana, 8 languages, eight languages for one of the projects, and the resources are always free to teachers. Where we can do it, we put them online so other teachers can access them. And where the funding allows, we also print things to give to teachers. So that basically it's handing over, okay, here are some supplementary materials. So we're not trying to change a curriculum. Here are things that other teachers in your country have produced. See what you can do with it. And we might do lots of active things, hence fish scales, to try and give you a sense of that. Yesterday, we were working with some of your high school students. It was great fun, good audience. As soon as I said to them, talk to each other, they were talking straight away. We were a little bit more shy. Online resources. Historiana has a lot of excellent resources which are teaching activities, but they bring sources which you can use for those. So it's an idea and materials for that. And I think one of you's got the web address for that on your presentation. Is it on yours? So the web address for this is coming up later. I think at the moment we have 13. Is that a terribly unlucky number in Korean? It is in England. 13 current projects running, and in various different places, lots of different partners. We are happy to work with anybody who shares our aspirations and our fish scales. And it would be lovely to see some of you. Some of members of the Foundation, other people were in Belfast, our most recent international training, and our next huge international training will be in Spain in 2017. So if you're able to come along to that, it would be good to have Korean workshops or Korean perspective and Korean attendance, and see you there with, usually it's something like 30 countries represented. It varies, but something in that region. Okay, so that is us. We have our sense of fish scales, and we have our sense of partnership and dialogue. And I hope that gives you an overview, and we'll ask you questions later. And I need to change